Hi! Have you ever asked what a nanoparticle is? I'm pretty sure you already heard about nanotechnology. But what is nanoscience? What is the use of it? I am Nathani Rost, and this is the Rost Science Posts. First of all, before I explain to you what nanotechnology is, it's very important to bear in mind that everything that we have in the world can be classified according to their size. For instance, by the naked eyes, we can see objects that has a minimum size of 1 millimeters. Below the size, we need to use an optical microscope, for example, to visualize bacteria and blood cells. Below of this, we can only visualize objects using a high-resolution microscope, for example, a transmission electron microscope. This kind of microscope is used for visualize nanoparticles or nanomaterials. So then, the nanomaterials are classified within a size until 100 nanometers. For you to have an idea of this size, you can take your hair and observe the thickness of your hair. This thickness is usually with a size around 100,000 nanometers. Now imagine a nanoparticles. A nanoparticles, the maximum size of it is 100 nanometer, which means 1,000 times lower than this. It's really small. But what is the reason that people use this size of nanomaterials? The reason is because when you change the size of a material, you change the properties of these materials. For instance, when I tell you about gold, what do you think? I'm pretty sure that you think about golden bars. Okay, but now, what if I talk about gold nanoparticles? Do you have an idea of what is a gold nanoparticles? A gold nanoparticle has this specific color, this red wine color. And why this happens? Because we change the size of, let's say, the normal gold, the bulk material. When we change the size of these materials to a much smaller particle, we change the properties of interaction with the light. And that's why now we see a solution made of gold, but with a red wine color. And it's interesting to change these colors because if we take this gold nanoparticle solution and change the size again, make the nanoparticles being close together, we will now change again the color of the solution. Then the nanoparticle will be from red to blue. I'm not going to explain in details why this happened now, because this is a content that I will be better explaining in the future in another video. Because I will dedicate one entire video only to talk about gold nanoparticles, because for me these materials are amazing. So this can be useful, for example, for detecting diseases. You can have a positive result that is, let's say, red, and a negative result that is blue. But again, I will explain this later in the future. Okay, nanoparticles can be formed by different materials, for example, gold or silver, or let's say gold and silver together, when you want to put together the different properties of the different materials. Or they can be composed also of iron oxide, which means these nanoparticles will have magnetic characteristics. I personally love this kind of nanomaterials because I worked with magnetic nanoparticles during my PhD, and I think that they are really interesting. Or we can still have particles composed by polymers, which means plastics. And also, according to the morphology, you can have nanospheres, that is the most used. You can have nanostars, nanocubes, nanorods, nano anythings. You can have many things. And how to choose the best composition and morphology? It relies on the use of your nanomaterials, because each use will demand a specific morphology or composition. And how we can obtain this in the lab, I will also explain in the future when I will show you some kinds of synthesis, which means the production of the nanoparticles. Because of the different properties of these nanomaterials, they are really interesting for a bunch of applications. For example, in chemistry, in environmental remediation, you can even purify contaminated water based on nanomaterials. Also, nanoparticles are widely used for productions of ink and also tissues and many others applications, also in engineering and in the development of new electronic devices. And for me, the most special application of nanomaterials is in the biomedical sciences. For example, for carrying medicines or treating disease. An interesting example of nanoparticles in nature are the magnetostatic bacteria. These bacteria are able to synthesize magnetic nanoparticles naturally, and these magnetic nanoparticles are called magnetosomes. These magnetosomes can be extracted by a process called biomineralization, and this kind of science is called nanobiotechnology. It's pretty fun to see this because as scientists, we spend many hours inside the lab trying to synthesize the perfect nanoparticles with the most perfect characteristics that we wish, and we studied a lot of papers. We try to reproduce many experiments, we work hard to obtain the perfect nanoparticles, and the bacteria can do this naturally. It's kind of amazing to see this. It's pretty interesting. Another example of nanotechnology in nature is the skin of chameleon. This chameleon has nanostructures in the skin which are able to organize and show different colors. This was an introduction video to give you a brief idea of what is nanotechnology, what are nanoparticles, and in the future I'm planning to bring much more content, especially focusing on the applications of the nanoparticles with certain compositions. I hope this can be useful to the society and to the science.